Hey, hey. Welcome. Hi. Today is Thursday, October 7th. Had to think about that for a second. I see we've got to do a little something here. Welcome. Hi. Today is Thursday, October 7th. Had to think about that for a second. Okay, so very sorry about the technical piece of it. We're going to get that bit rolling. It will not be clipped out. This is the Unpolished Supermom. Hi, I'm Emily Bigelow, creator of the Satisfied Working Mother Method, and I'm your host today with the Unpolished Supermom, episode 1. Okay, so hopefully we can stream all of our technology the way that we want. We'll probably end up sharing this into Facebook as well, maybe end up seeing about some streaming later. The Unpolished Supermom. This is real talk for real life solutions for real moms. Real talk about real life with real solutions for busy moms. And today we are diving into emotions. And the old way that most moms are dealing with emotions, maybe kind of the way that we dealt with them. Sorry, I'm a little bit nervous. This is episode 1. You're just going to have to forgive me. I'm just going to try to do this as live and as raw and as real as possible. Got a few notes that I'm going to reference and some things. So just trying to keep it real here. Really the old way of dealing with emotions is either like stuff them down the rug, or maybe they just didn't happen, or blubber them all over someone. Most recently, I'm in a membership group. I need to just kind of pause this a second. I'm in a membership group and a mastermind. And the conversation was about emotions and how like, oh, they don't really matter, feel the fear and do it anyway, kind of those kind of things. And where I understand the philosophy to that, I have to disagree, because emotions are the rumble strip of life. And when they are what, like that warning sign that tell you when you're starting off the path. And if you can honor them and correct them as needed, you can stay out of the ditch. Okay. So for example, talking about how, fear is not the boss of you and it doesn't have to run your life and all of those things. Emotions are teachers. So imagine that you're in a dark alley and it's nighttime and there's a sound and there's something that's triggered, and fear instantly creates a hormonal response in the body. Your heart beats faster. There's actual adrenaline that starts pumping. And that fear then gives you an opportunity to fight or flight, right? So fear can be a great teacher. Our emotions can be teachers. They can be that rumble strip to keep us out of trouble. But if we're stuffing them away and like, oh, they don't matter, and we don't know what the feelings feel like in our body, and when they come up and what they're here to teach, then that's a hard way. Like you can't get to a happy ending if you've had a crappy journey. Like the journey can't be crappy. And then boom, here I am at the ending. And all of a sudden I'm happy. Like it just doesn't work that way. So today my objective is to help you with 3 things, namely stress, frustration, and love. And so my purpose in doing that is to help you to help yourself with stress, frustration, and love. And we're going to decompress and dissect some things along the way to help you, also to help your children. Because during this last, I keep saying 18 months, we must be at about 20 months or something by now. During this last period of time on our globe, our children and a lot of adults as well have suffered emotionally in ways that they don't have the ability to process and to verbalize and so that's what we're here to do. That's what this series is about. This is taken from a piece of my course, The Satisfied Working Mother Method. It's taken from a pillar. There's 3 pillars inside that course. And the pillar is called Mastering the Cult of Perfection. You could call it paralysis of perfection, but I believe that perfection is a cult in our society, thinking that we can obtain something, that we're eternal beings. And because we're eternal, it'll never be done. And because it will never be done, we'll never be perfect. So we're chasing something so mastering the cult of perfection. This is where this emotional conversation comes from today. And mastering this rumble strip of life, right? So if the objective to this life is to have a joyous journey, because you can't have a happy ending to an unhappy journey, right? The goal is to figure out how to be happy or satisfied along the way. So, by the way, the Satisfied Working Mother Method, because happiness, think about the feeling of happiness. And actually, most of us, when it comes to emotions, we don't have much emotional literacy, meaning we can name a few of the emotions like fear, anger, frustration. We're going to call it stress, overwhelm, sadness, sorrow. Like there's a gamut of emotions that are all along the way that most of us, we never have taken time to gain the emotional literacy to know what they are and how they feel in our body. That's what we're here to do during this series. So I think it's really, really important, especially now during this time in our society, that we take the time to break this down. So happiness, think about how happiness feels in your body. It feels airy, it feels light, but it's also fleeting. It feels like it's fast moving. It's situational. It's usually from an outside source. Something outside of us makes us feel happy. And satisfaction, think about that. Think about satisfaction. Satisfaction is more satiating. It's deeper. It feels deeper. It feels more solid. Okay. So as we get started here, first of all, you are in charge of your feelings, and no one can make you feel anything without your permission. Okay. So there's a line between action and reaction. There's a line. And your responsibility is that line between action and reaction and the way that you respond. Okay, that's your responsibility. And let me just throw this out there in the meanwhile too. If everything that you think you want, think about something that you've wanted for a while and why you want that. Everything that you think you want is because you think you will feel better in the having of it. And then if you can feel good without that circumstance, without that thing, isn't feeling good the goal? Go directly to the end result. So you can't have a happy ending to an unhappy journey. Okay, so remember that. Now, the old way of dealing with emotions, and maybe the way that you were raised, and maybe the way a lot of us were raised, was, what are you crying about? There's nothing to cry about. You're okay. Big boys don't cry. Maybe girls were given a little more permission to cry. We were taught not to feel our feelings and then help them move along, because that's the idea. Feel them and help them move along, process the emotion. And maybe it's just not the way that our parents were taught. But it's not okay to continue something just because someone wasn't taught. So it's now our job to then learn so that we can then teach. And especially to this generation of youth now, who at this monumentous time on this globe have an opportunity to recreate in a way that other societies previously have had, like probably during the Great Depression or things. But our job is to help our children be able to process their emotions. And you cannot write a map to somewhere you have not been. So if you're trying to help your child process emotions and you don't know how to do it, you can't write that map. So that's why we're starting with the mamas. We've got to start with the mamas. Okay. So since our emotions are this rumble strip along the side of the road, and they literally keep us out of trouble, that's what our emotions do, because it's impossible to feel good doing something that we feel bad about. Does that make sense? It's impossible to feel good doing something that we feel bad about, which is why our emotions are so important. And I want you to think about before we had language, we had emotions. So look at a baby. A baby can read facial expressions, those mirror neurons, like that's literally how they learn to do everything, walk, move, feed themselves, like all of these things. Babies can recognize facial expressions and vocal tones long before they have words. So emotions and expressions have saved us also when there is no time for words. I mean, imagine that you are with somebody and they just go, and whatever it is, and they start running instantly, you got to do it too, right? You got to take off. They didn't even need to say anything. They could just, and so emotions are so very important. Now, I want you to think of your emotions like a lake, okay? If a lake has an inlet and an outlet, there's a flow. If your emotions come in, filter, enrich, leave sediment, and then process out. If a lake is not allowing things to flow, the water becomes stagnant and it becomes stinky. It's then actually kind of becomes a pond, right? And it gets gross and nasty things grow. And that is your emotions. So think of some of the bluest, most beautiful lakes. They're fantastic colors because of the rich minerals that are in the lake. They're beautiful. And your emotions are the minerals, like to your life. They enrich your life, but we have to let them flow. We have to let them come in, leave their enrichment, and then flow on out, right? Sweeping things under the rug. Some families are notorious for that. Like they don't deal with any of the stuff. They just kind of sweep it under the rug. They can pretend like that it's not there. So first we must learn to acknowledge the emotions, and then we will learn how to release or let them flow. And that's what this series is about. Okay. We're going to deep dive deeper today or after today into emotions and the feelings in the body and the message that they're here to give, and then how to process them. Okay. So those are coming in future, but today I'm going to leave you with 3 things. Remember, stress, frustration, and love. I wish that I could say that in a short session that I could teach you comprehensively. I mean, I just can't. There is so much deep work behind emotional IQ, behind the language of emotion, behind the message of emotion. And there's a saying that says, the tissue will tell the issue, and the body weeps the tears that the eyes refuse to shed. So it's really important that we process through some of these emotions because they do hold up, right, within the body. So I know that there is deep work behind this. I've done the emotional work for years, and I am far from a master. And, things are always coming up for all of us. I'm just learning the language. And I would recommend a book called The Language of Emotions. That's a really, really good one. And you could get that on Audible. I have it on Audible, and I also have it in tactile form. I find that the Audible walks through some of the processes of bringing up an emotion and feeling it in the body so that you can actually have the cognitive connection of an emotion and a feeling to the body, where if you're reading the book, you can't run through that process. You can't kind of close the eyes and run through that. But I think having it in a tactile form is really important too. So that's the book, The Language of Emotions, also Emotional IQ, and the work of doctors Bruce Lipton and Joe Dispenza. They do a lot of good in teaching this as well if you want to dive a little bit deeper, all of those books. So starting with some base work here. Here's the 3 things that we must start with, okay? I'm going to call these emotional scapegoats. These are 3 emotional scapegoats. And I hope you're familiar with where the term scapegoat comes from. But literally, biblically, it was to put sins on a goat and chase it off the cliff. So it's to put something on something else and then just run it astray. And so the first emotional scapegoat, number 1, is stress. So let's be super clear. Stress is not an emotion. Stress is not an emotion. The word itself is a term that is used when talking about pressure, but it's not emotion. So if you could remove the word, I am so stressed. Okay, let me take just a second on this. Say you come home from wherever, maybe it's work or it's, out running some errands, it's doing some things. So you come in and there's a lot on your plate and you've walked in the door and you've got this and this and this and this. And then the kids are like, oh, and this and this and this. And this pressure of things on you causes a bit of a reaction, right? And you're like, I just can't, I am so stressed. I can't do this, that. So I want you to think about the times that you use that word stress and the times that you hear other people use that word stress. And I want you to know that that is not an emotion. And the very first thing that you need to change anything is awareness. You can't change what you don't acknowledge. So if there's a deep underlying emotion underneath stress, whether that's anger, whether it's the stress is coming from fear, because stress can come from fear. I'm afraid I'm going to get fired. I'm afraid I'm going to lose my job. I'm afraid I'm not going to have the money to pay the bills, which is adding these stresses, right? Like if you got to pull back a few layers to get down to the bottom of that, but stress isn't the emotion that's there. So if you can get to that baseline, then you have an awareness. And when you have an awareness, you have something that you can change because you can't change what you don't acknowledge. So first you've got to acknowledge it. You've got to get to the bottom of that. So the whole, I'm so stressed, find the emotion and choose to speak the emotional word so that you can process it much quicker. So I'm literally asking you to take the word stress and just remove it from your vocabulary and find the actual emotion, the actual feeling that's underneath that so that you can get to the solution. Like literally, this will be a game changer for you. So that's number one, stress. You can't say it anymore. You can't feel it anymore. You got to get to the real emotion. Stress is not an emotion. Okay. It's a term that we use when talking about pressure. Number two, frustration. Let me help you with every frustration that you have from here out. Okay. All frustration comes from unmet expectations. All frustration comes from unmet expectations. So think about a time maybe when you were frustrated. There was an expectation. Anytime that you feel frustrated, there's an expectation. So what is that expectation? So when you feel frustrated about something, okay, wait, back up. What's the expectation? What's the expectation? Where is it coming from? And is that expectation something that you decided in your mind? So let me give you an example. You have maybe you've come home from work, everything that you've done, you made dinner, and now the kitchen is kind of a bit of a mess. And then everybody just takes off and nobody sticks around to help clean up. And you're mad about it, right? You're frustrated. You're slamming things around and maybe not slamming things around, but maybe a little bit noisily putting things away. So what is the expectation? And if it's something that you decided in your mind, like I cooked dinner and I shouldn't have to clean it up, is that something that was agreed upon verbally? Have you even spoken that? Is that an agreement that's been violated? Did you tell your family, like, the rule is in this house, if you cook, you do not have to clean up. That's the rule. And if everybody takes off, I mean, that's an expectation that has been communicated. Okay. So now you have grounds like, hey, come on back, guys. Like I told you that this is the expectation is if you don't want to do the dishes, then you feel free to cook. But if you cook, you don't have to do the dishes. Okay. So that's just an example of an expectation, but this carries over into so many ways and so many things and so many avenues of life and in our home and in our relationships and in our work. What is the expectation? Where's it coming from? Is it something you decided in your mind? Is it an agreement, something that's been agreed on, that's been violated? Is it an expectation that you can communicate and you can resolve this and future frustrations? Because I promise you, all you have to do is tell the family, hey, remember that agreement that we had that if I cook, I'm not doing the dishes. So do not leave and go back up to your room or go into whatever, watch TV, do other things, unless and until that we've been cleaned up around here. Okay. Is it a contract that needs negotiated or renegotiated? Now, when I say contract, I don't mean a literal thing that you've signed. A lot of times in our relationships, we have contracts. We have kind of established contracts, spoken, unspoken. For example, if there is a contract, an unspoken contract that my husband takes out the garbage to the road on Tuesdays before the garbage man comes on Wednesday. So if he doesn't do that and I do that and I'm frustrated at him, like the frustration is the unmet expectation, but is there kind of this ongoing standing contract? And maybe that needs to be renegotiated. Maybe it's not always on him to take out the garbage, right? So sometimes we have contracts. We've kind of created them in our mind. Maybe we've almost created them just by habit of activity of things that we've done. We've kind of created this contract. So is it something that needs to be negotiated or renegotiated? Because contracts usually have an expiry date. There's usually a date when maybe things need to be reassessed. And that happens oftentimes over a course of time, either years or whatever. And so there might be something that we need to go back and renegotiate. Because sometimes we act like this lifetime is kind of like this play. We're all here doing our part, right? And without realizing it, sometimes we're handing out a script. Okay, so you're my husband, and this is your part, and this is how you show up, and this is what you say, and this is what you do. And then we do it to our kids. Okay, you're my kids, so here's your script. I'm the mom. You're the kid. Here's how you show up. Here's what you do. This is your part. This is what you say. We do it to friends. We do it to other relationships. It's like we're running around handing around these scripts and not just allowing people to just be who they are, to show up as they are, to play their part the way they want to play it, and to say what they want to say. And so if that's part of the process of frustration for you, I'm going to ask you to almost just literally pull back the script and rip it up and allow people to show up the way that they genuinely are meant to show up. Because nobody can do some of the deep work that we're here to do on this planet if we are running around trying to meet other people's expectations. Like, we have to meet the expectations within our own soul. Okay. So if that's the error on our part, if we are frustrated and it's time to take back the script, maybe it's time to renegotiate contracts. It is not up to us how other people show up for us. What is up to us is that line of how we respond between action and reaction, that line, how we respond. So if you have frustration, what's the unmet expectation? Go to the source and fix it, correct it, talk about it, take responsibility, the responsibility that you have to it. If you have some responsibility, I'm sure that you do have that responsibility there. And in the end, that's all you can fix. And the third thing is love. So I just would like to just tap on this for just a second. Love is a state of being. It is not an emotion. It is one of the highest states to be in. And our ability to love beyond, outside of, or in spite of conditions is one of the highest things that I think that we're here to accomplish as human beings. Like, I literally think that's why we're here, is to learn to love beyond the conditions, all the conditions. Yet so many seem to be able to love best when conditions are right. But love is a state in that you can love when you're sad. You can love when you're mad. You can love when you're happy. joyful. You can love when you are frustrated. So look at your parent-child relationship. Look at your relationship with your kids or your relationship with a spouse or something. Always usually a kid is an easy point out. That's more of an unconditional. You can feel the other emotions. You can be, yet still be in that state of loving. You can feel sadness, happy, joyful, frustration, mad, all those things at your child, towards your child, and you can still be loving them. Hence, love is a state. And I believe the goal is to be able to be in a state of loving regardless of conditions or outside pressures, or loving unconditionally. It's easy to love those that love you, right? So learning to love regardless of other conditions or other emotions, love or above is the goal. It's literally what we're here to do. Learn to love regardless of conditions. So number one, stress is not a scapegoat. You get to the bottom of the emotion. What is the emotion? And choose to speak that emotional word and you'll process it much quicker. And frustration, every frustration comes from unmet expectations. And where did the expectation come from? Is it communicated? Is it not? Is it a contract that needs to be renegotiated? Is it a script that you handed out? And are you loving only within certain conditions? Or can you love regardless, right, of the conditions? So coming up in future episodes of the Unpolished Working Mom, the Unpolished Supermom, I will be diving more. I will introduce the emotional scale, and I will introduce the emotions and how they are, what they feel in the body. We'll go into some of that in detail, and we will learn ways of processing them so that you can work through that lake of emotions, that they can come in and that they can go out. So we're going to cover these emotions and these things in a little bit deeper, because what happens is when you start to understand and to process your emotions, you find that you have control over aspects of your life. Like the emotional work is the work. You can't have a happy ending to an unhappy journey. Life can't be sucky, 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 sucky. And then boom, here we are. Like what, maybe in the afterlife or something? Like you can't have a happy ending to an unhappy journey. The emotional work is the work. Your emotions are the rumble strip to keep you out of the ditch, out of the gunk, out of the trouble of the sidelines. And through this process, you learn to feel satisfied more and more, regardless of conditions. It's practice. Being satisfied regardless of conditions. Boy, oh boy, have we had a lesson in this, an opportunity for growth over the last 2 years on this planet, to learn to be satisfied regardless of conditions. And you're much more in line with your response, your ability to respond, the way that you respond to things, it literally changes. And this is a game changer for life. And I have to weigh really heavy on what this does to the next generation. Because when you can see your children struggle with an emotion, and you can acknowledge them in their struggle, and you can help them find the words to their emotions and to their state of being, you can help them process their emotions. They don't have to be stuck and ruin the whole lake, turn it into a stinky pond. It is so empowering to be able to use your words and to be able to work through emotions, like literally up the emotional scale, and not just stuffing them down and holding them in and thinking that they will go away. They don't. Emotions are literally wired in the body. And I don't know if you know this, but this is why your memories are tied to emotion. They're literally wired in the body to some of the heavy emotions. So some of the memories that you have, those are wired in because of the emotion that was there, the emotional tie, good, bad, whatever. So that literally has to do with our brain and the functioning of our brain. So at the deepest level, we can help our children long-term when we can offer the emotional empowerment and the education. And this is not taught in school. There is not an emotional IQ class in school. And since you can't write a map to somewhere you haven't been, mama, we have to start with you. We have to start with you. So most people never learn this for themselves, right? They just fly off the handle because of stress, because of frustration, because of whatever, name the emotion. They fly off the handle. They burn themselves out and they burn others in the process. They dam up their lake so that it becomes like stinky and stagnant. They numb out to TV, internet, food, drugs, alcohol, any number of mind-numbing practices, and they never feel life fully because the emotional work is the work. And we can literally shift everything when we can shift our emotional state. I mean, wouldn't you rather be that mom? So choose to join me in this quest. Let's up level. Let's lift from where we are. Let's lift with what and who we are and with the influence that we have and those that are around us that influence in our lives. So now you know why the emotions are important. You've had 3 hacks, 3 little things. It is stress. Stress is the scapegoat. Frustration is the scapegoat. And love can be used as a scapegoat in the sense that we're using conditions to love. So let's learn some deeper tricks. We're going to cover some ways to keep the water flowing, and let's learn some processing tips and tricks. And I do have some references for you that I can share from the Satisfied Working Mother method. I won't be able to share all of those. Those are kept within the course, but I am looking forward to future episodes. This is episode 1 of the Unpolished Supermom, and just real talk about real life with real solutions for busy moms, because globally on this planet right now, there's this almost like this fluctuation you can almost feel of emotions and energy. And our kids are feeling it. And they don't know how to process it. And there's a lot of people choosing to end that because they don't know how. So we're here to create a better generation. And that's what I hope that this conversation about emotions will do. We'll dive into some other topics in the Unpolished Supermom. We'll be diving into other topics that we cover on the Satisfied Working Mother method. That's it for today's episode, Thursday, October 7th. Although it's dated, this is a timeless conversation. So in the meanwhile, until next week, take care of you so that you can take care of everyone else, because you matter. And it's not stress, and it's not frustration, and it's not love unless it's unconditional. So that's the work.